Welcome to the St. Louis podcast for August 18th, 2023. I'm your glorious host again here today by myself without Garrett Atkins, partner and chief sales officer at Vi Media, as well as partner at West County Insulation. Today we got Jeff Mason on the podcast, and we're going to get in the weeds with him and his business. But before we do, this is St. Louis podcast. Each and every Friday at 7 a.m., we drop an episode on all major podcasting audio and video platforms. So wherever you listen to your podcast, you will be able to find it there. And where we talk and meet with the most badass people and creators to talk about business, entrepreneurship, and current events. Jeff, he's a creator and author of Simple Biz 360 and Simple Biz 360 podcasts. This week is about to be your 200th episode, which is awesome. So congrats on that.
Thank you.
You're also the owner of North 59 Outdoors, a sales and marketing agency representing various public safety and outdoor brands in the upper Midwest, and you have a sociology degree from Stockton University. So welcome to the podcast. How you doing, Jeff?
Thank you. Very good, Eric. Good to see you, man. Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you on. You know, you've been doing podcasting for almost 4 years now. You know, you've been working with, Alex, now Matt here at Half Coast Studios that whole time. So Shout out Half Coast Studios, of course, as always. Now, I wanted to first kind of ask you, how did you kind of transition from the field of essentially customer experience to Simple Biz 360? What kind of made you make that jump?
Sure. Well, it was just a 30-year process. I'd been watching bad experiences. That was kind of my gravitational pull back in 1988. And I really knew that I would eventually write a book someday about it. And, Simple Biz just... so when it came time to write the book, it felt like the right title. It felt like the right way to look at business. Mm-hmm. I'm really trying to oversimplify things, if you will. And so Simple Biz 360 just represents that, we look at everything that wraps around the business. So we don't just focus on one area. We look at the totality of doing business. Mm-hmm. And how can we simplify it in a way that makes the customer happy and creates the good experience.
Yeah. And I think what's nice about that is I think business owners and even, executives, leaders, it always becomes overcomplicated, right? Yeah. It's almost like there's all of these things to do, right? There's all of these things to do. There's these people, the people to manage, there's the customers, there's your referral partners and all of this stuff. And it seems so complicated, but at the end of the day, if you just sit down, you almost, kind of map out what your goals are for the day, what your goals are for the week. It makes it a lot easier to come and be like, okay, this is what actually needs to be done. Instead of seeing the list of 100 things, and you're like, holy shit, how am I ever going to get this stuff done?
I mean, well, when you think about it, I for a recent discussion I gave in Australia, mm-hmm. I just oversimplified business to be two sides of the same coin, mm-hmm. right? You've got something you do that produces an invoice, and then somebody pays that invoice. Yep. So the front side of the coin is what you do. The back side is you've got a customer that you did it for, and they pay you your bill. And so, I mean, in a really funny kind of way, that's how simple business is. We all have something we do, mm-hmm. and we want to get paid for it. And then there's what's the residue that's left over? It's the experience of that whole process. So yeah, we can get up in the get down in the weeds, get up in the trees. But when it comes down to it, it's something. You pay for that something, and then there's the after effect.
Mm-hmm. So you talk to all these business owners. What do you think is like the biggest mistake that most of them are making right now that could be an easy fix, or at least a fix that they can set their eyes on to make a dramatic change?
Absolutely. Great question. Unequivocal answer is follow through.
Mm-hmm. So you mean by that, so it's like the 20-80 principle, right? You focus on the 20%, then the 80% is the actual outcome. So you mean in terms of you set a plan, but most people don't actually do anything with it, right? They build processes, they don't implement it. You see these changes that need to be made and they're never done. Is that what you mean by that?
No, not really. What I really mean is that even if you have internal customers mm-hmm. or external customers, mm-hmm. it's the promise that's made that's never delivered. So it's a broken promise. It's lack of follow through.
Yes.
If you really listen to people and their complaints about businesses, business experiences, purchases they've made.
Mm-hmm.
Man, if you just really think about it, most of it centers on that company never did what they said they were going to do.
Yep.
And getting that ball across the finish line was an arduous, really long-winded process that took a lot of time and energy. And usually that time and energy is on the part of the person that wants the ball across the finish line. And, I think if there's three things, and, you hear this on my podcast all the time, it's if there's three things to change the trajectory of your business today, respond to every inquiry, follow up completely, and follow through comprehensively. If you just did those three things, if you woke up tomorrow and started doing that, things would change.
Yeah. And with marketing companies, I think the biggest kind of stigma that we have is the follow through aspect.
Yeah.
We go in, we promise the world, you're going to get this leads, you're going to be ranking here. And at the end of the day, we continue to hear over and over again from, clients that have had not one, not two, not three, but 5 to 10 bad experiences with past companies. And it all just has to do with expectations, what they've said, and they never end up getting those results that were actually outlined for them. And of course, that makes our job at Vi either harder or easier also at the same point. Because going back to the coin, right? You have, obviously, you're going to have stuff you're going to have to overcome. But also at the same point, if you can essentially bring up the fact that, hey, you've had these problems because of X, Y, and Z. Here is how we address those problems. And here's why we really don't have those type of issues, because here's our process, right? Yeah. And here's how we've done it for hundreds of companies, and here's how it's going to work out for you.
Yep.
Versus, coming in and being like, okay, great, we'll sign you onto a contract. We promise the world, and at the end of the day, we don't have meetings with the client. We're not doing the work, and et cetera, et cetera. And then you end up having the bad reviews. You end up having people not referring you business, and most importantly, I would say, is just bad juju, right? You have bad karma, and that could come out of the woodworks in more ways than one.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the time, it could take years. It could take decades. But, I've seen companies essentially fall apart just from bad practices.
Yeah. Oh, the business graveyard is full of that. And those bad practices will eventually lead to, in my experience, the bad customer experience, if you will. So, yeah, it's, I think that we often tend to overlook some of the simplest things in business, and we ignore it. I mean, for instance, what is all the marketing in the world really geared towards doing from your end? You want to create a call to action with somebody who's participating with it, watching it, listening it, whatever. The same thing in business. I mean, the person who's paying the invoice, there's a ton of call to actions they want that business to do, whether the business has promised it or whether it's just inherent, kind of baked into the cake of the business, if you will. And it's that call to action that fails so many times. And that customer yearns for those companies who can perform that without being, nudged and pulled and poked and prodded and badgered. And, that's really one of the simplest blessings in business. If you can just do what you say you're going to do. Boom. And I'm just going to give a shout out here. And again, I don't know if, the listeners I'm not getting paid to do this. This isn't a plug for Half Coast Studios, but I'm up to episode 200. So I've recorded 200 podcast episodes with this studio, and I can't count on my hand because there's not 5 things, so I guess I can't count on my hand. There's maybe 2 or 3 things that have happened here that I wish hadn't happened. The 200 episodes that we've done have been whatever these guys have said they're going to do. They do it without me poking, prodding, nudging, pulling. It's just great.
Yep.
And it's for me having a show to do. I got enough to worry about. I get nervous. I got show notes. I got something to follow, right? I don't want to, and the things that have happened that have been kind of funny is we taped 4 episodes one day, and we're done with taping the 4 episodes, and we're, all wrapped up, and all of a sudden I think it was Alex at the time said,
Yes, thank you, Alex. I appreciate that very much, man.
The SIM card didn't take the recordings. Can we do those over? And you're like, do I get mad or, do I laugh? And I mean, so those have been a couple things. But other than that, man, you guys understand the customer experience here. You realize what's going on when they walk through the door. Everything's always ready. Everything's always done professionally. I don't have to ask Matt or Alex to do. I mean, everything's taken care of. And so, I mean, from that point of view, that's a real good benchmark for another company to follow, is what Half Coast Studios does.
Yeah. And that's, those 2 or 3 times over 200 episodes. I say that's a pretty good run. Because you still see issues with large podcasts with audio and things like that, and they got millions of views, which is crazy.
Yes.
And it's, yes, I completely agree. And that's the thing. That's also why, we're paying to be in this space, right? We don't, as podcast hosts, right, we don't want to have to be responsible for running that shit. Right. That's right. Not what we do. Correct. It's not what we want to do.
Correct.
And that's why we leave it up to the professionals, aka Matt and Alex back there, to spin the 1s and 2s. If it became a situation where you had to be babysitting, you wouldn't have 200 episodes. At least not here.
No.
Right?
Definitely not.
You would have left.
I would have gone someplace else.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly right.
So it's been fun. I mean, it really has. And it's been an experience for me. And, to watch these guys do what they do every week in and out, the consistency that's baked in to the whole company is just it's top tier for sure.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to us just building processes. Like we have, even obviously at Vi, right? We have specific processes for all of our services, and that's where I think, obviously, as companies grow, usually they kind of run into a problem of either their processes not being in place and they have to change them. Or also potentially you get to the point of being big enough where now you're hiring people that maybe don't have that expertise that they did before. So that's where you run into companies hitting essentially like a line where they used to be great and now they're not anymore. And, I think there's something to be said about that, because it's almost like they didn't have the processes in place. They didn't have what they needed in place to continue to succeed. And now they're going to, they kind of hit the plateau, they hit the top of the mountain, or at least the top of their mountain, and they're going to start coming back down, which is just like, I guess it is what it is at the end of the day, but really processes are a big thing. I mean, I remember it was probably 5. So Vi is 7 years old in October. It's probably about 5 years ago, after 2 years in business, we're like, why don't we have any of this set up? Like, why don't we have an A to Z of what we do when we start building a website, right? We buy the domain, right? We set up hosting. We do X, Y, and Z for all of this stuff. Same with, the different services that we have. That way, essentially, when someone comes in that's new, they know our process, they know our expectations, they know what they need to do. Of course, we train and teach them and things like that, but they have an understanding and an outline of what they're actually supposed to be doing, versus most companies, I feel like, kind of hire people they're not ready for. They don't know the math equation of when they should bring someone on, and then they kind of just throw them in the fire, and they're like, why isn't this working?
Right. Bingo. I mean, processes to wholeheartedly so important, procedures, standard operating procedures, all those things, you call them by different names. But, when you look at it, it really boils down to, if you don't have those processes, it's like, if you don't have those in place, it's like being on a trip, and if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, right? And so you have people paying for a service from you. They don't want this errorless driver just driving. I drive different today than I did yesterday, and let's go here. And I know you want to get to the end result. We'll get there, but today we're going to take a detour. No, they want to know, hey, I'm paying for something that's been thought through, and I think, I'm starting to use the phrase through thinking more in my teaching and in my, my sharing with companies. And, when I give talks, it's really, we've been conditioned to let so many other people think for us that when we really realize that we need to think through things for our customers, that's when the process has become crystallized. That's when you can see the roadmap much clearer. And when you can document that and replicate that and deliver that with consistency over and over and over, that's the art of the deal. I mean, when it comes down to it.
Absolutely. Why do you think it is that a lot of business owners have this problem of not following through, of over promising and under delivering? Is there some sort of underlying issue there?
Yeah, I personally think there's a lot of knee slapping going out there. There's a lot of haphazard business construction and business delivery. And I think that results in business destruction. So I think if you look at the business graveyard, I think you see a lot of people that have had a great ability and they go into business without the processes, without those guidelines, those guardrails to keep them on the highway. And it just becomes whatever it becomes.
Yep.
And you know what? You might have a talented person that can create a talented, really cool product. But the way they go about it is just, knee slapping. Let's just, shoot from the hip today, do it different today than we did yesterday. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
We'll get there. No, you can't. You can't continually pay out for people that deliver things that way.
Correct. I think it's almost a lot of fake business too. And what I mean by kind of fake business is almost like, I don't know if it was COVID, maybe it was beforehand. Obviously I've only been in business for so long. It seems like more and more so there's just fake businesses, meaning people that build a business, it's not really real. And it was never really meant to be real. It was almost meant to kind of appease them, right? And to get their admiration up and for people to kind of look up to them versus actually building a business that's real, that's offering a service, that's offering a product to clients, to those end users. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. If it's, people, I love entrepreneurship, of course, but it's almost like there's too many of us now.
Yep.
And I think that's the wrong thing to say. Maybe there's just too many of us that aren't prepared, that don't take the right steps, that just try and jump in. Because a lot of the time is like, be a business owner, just jump in.
Right.
It's like, that's great if you're sitting on the sidelines and just waiting for something to happen 100%. But a lot of those people just aren't ready.
Right.
And they start offering their services and products and the customer is upset.
Right. Well, right.
And it's like, at what point does that stop? Or is that always going to be a thing? Because it seems like it's getting worse. Maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just my opinion. I could totally be wrong.
Well, I think there's, I think in the social media space, we hear the terminology imposter syndrome. I think you need to be a discerning buyer today. If you're going online and you're going to put your eggs in a basket,
100%, yeah.
And you don't really understand what you're dealing with, and you're taking a pot shot at it with this person because they've presented themselves in a way that looks and sounds and feels good. And I think that, there's no meat on those plates in a lot of cases, I think. And I think there's a lot of false expectations that are projected. And then once you get your money wrapped up into that, you realize, oh my gosh, what have I done? And that's just from what I've heard. I haven't fallen victim to that myself. But I think there's way too much out there. The people that have paid their dues, I think in a lot of ways, a person of my age, you can look at somebody like me and, there's some seasoning that goes on, right?
Sure,
there's some test, I've had my clock cleaned financially twice by trying to open up companies. So this is my really third foray into opening up a company, and it worked. But the first two times it failed, and you learn some things from that. But most importantly, the message that sends is not every young person that's out there that's saying that they're this or that and they're 23 or 25. I don't know if they really, sometimes they have the ability to bring the goods, but I think a lot of times they're over embellishing on what they're capable of. Maybe they're good intention, and I think they probably are, but do they have the ability level to do what they say they're going to do?
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's interesting. That's interesting for sure. So you said 2 failed ventures beforehand.
Mhm.
I know you said more importantly, but I do want to get back to what are some mistakes you made in your previous businesses that we can all learn on?
Yeah, well, first mistake I think that was really glaring to my dad and I started a business in 1989, and what we did is we bought a dealership. We were remanufacturing laser toner cartridges.
Okay.
All right. So my dad builds a factory in his basement, New Jersey. So he's got this 800 square foot factory he builds out, and he's going to be the guy that replaces these drums and does all these things. So I'm going to be the sales avenue, right? So we take this unconventional loan. My dad does. He pays a high interest rate, against his house as collateral. We go out and do this thing, and we build this thing, and we signed up for a dealership out of a company out of Iowa. So here we are in New Jersey. Now, the national average for this widget is $79. What my dad and I failed to do was to look at the New York market, which is where we're doing business in New York, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area, Jersey, and Delaware. Well, the going price for that average widget was really $45. So in that heated market, you had to learn how to do business more efficiently. You had to learn how to rely on less profitability than out in other markets across the country. So we built our financial projections on $79 when it was $45.
Yeah, big difference.
Huge difference. So we every unit we produced, we had a $24 dollar delta that we had to figure out what do we. Well, no more than that. It's 34. 30,
35. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big nut to make up for. And so my mistake there was we didn't do our local homework.
Market research.
Right.
Yeah. And that, I think that goes into a lot, we do a lot of market research as well with digital marketing, but what's interesting about digital marketing is we really have to look at it from a national scale more so than a local scale. But I think really home service companies, contractors, things like that, who we work a lot with, that's super important because looking at, a painting company, right? You want to be able to know, obviously, usually you don't want to be the most expensive, right? But you usually don't want to be on the bottom 50% either as far as price is concerned. But of course, then you want your profitability as well. So it's kind of a playing game as to kind of figure out how to price that stuff, but also making sure that is, knowing that what other competitors are actually charging. When we started West County Insulation, we actually had competitors come out and bid projects for us. And that way we were able to see how much they charged, for our values and things like that. And, per foot and things like that. So that way we were able to see, okay, great. We know kind of what people in St. Louis are charging. Now we can actually put our estimates at a number that makes sense and then go off of those numbers as far as profitability and things like that are concerned. But, I think it's a little bit easier to do it now than it would have been back in the day. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Because now, you just call someone up and they'll be out there and get an estimate to you quickly. I'm sure in the 80s it was a little bit more difficult to get that market research. You didn't have internet. Yeah. So it's not like you go to Google and type in, "Hey, what's the average price this is going for?" You would never know.
Yeah, you wouldn't know. You wouldn't. You had to do some. You had to do some work, and even the the marketing was interesting back then. So my dad and I, right? He's got his factory in the basement. He builds it out. I'm working out of my garage in southern New Jersey, outside the Philly market. So we end up getting UPS headquarters. So I'm literally taking my seats out of my van once a week. I'm going up to Connecticut, going to UPS headquarters, getting all these cartridges, bringing them back. It's big business, right? So these guys end up moving to Atlanta, which derails our business activity with them. But what was funny was, guy says to me at one point, he goes, "Man, you know what? I'm so glad we hooked up with you guys because I have a drawer full of all these basement and living room businesses that all these guys have tried to get our business with. And it's so nice to be aligned with a professional company like yours." Now, so it was interesting, right? We presented ourselves as in a way that seemed and felt professional. The guys never asked, where do you do this? and we would have had to say, well, we built a manufacturing center in our basement. But
Yeah,
it was the
yeah.
way that we conducted ourselves. And again, I kind of looked at this and said, another lesson in this business experience. So it was funny. There were all these imposters back then that were saying they could do this or that and putting it on a brochure.
Yep.
But when push came to shove, these cartridges sucked. They didn't work. And here we were saying, hey, we're a professional entity. We'll deliver a good product and create a good experience. And we did. And it didn't matter where we did it. But, it was just funny how we could get away with it.
Yep.
And nobody really ever knew, right?
Well, something we do for all of our clients is we try and make them look as professional as possible online. And it really is not that hard of a thing to do. Just making sure that if someone's looking up your name, that you're going to be found on Google, that you have a decent looking site that's talking about your services. You have a good logo, you have a decent looking crew of people, right? And I don't know what it is in the contractor space again, but it seems like for some of these companies, it's hard for them to get around the thought that you also have to look professional. You have to be professional. Even if you're a painter, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're going in or working on someone's house, you're talking to that homeowner. There's expectations that of course they have. They don't want some dude smoking cigs, out front and walking back into their house and smelling like cigs. I don't know if you saw that video in, I think LA or somewhere in California. Dude was working on their house, put a cigarette out in front of a large, what are those massive like shrubs, like privacy shrubs or whatever those things are called? 6 hours later, massive fire. And apparently it's been an issue in California or wherever the hell that was. But I'm just like, what are you even doing?
Right.
Why are you putting a cigarette butt out? It's just,
right. But no,
that's
but
not professional. Like, what are you
go.
doing? Like that shouldn't have ever happened. And I'm assuming that person wasn't the business owner, but now the business owner should look back at this and be like, why are my workers, why are my employees, why is my team, why do I have the culture set up here that they think it's all right to do this?
And you see, therein lies the story of the bad customer experience, right? That contractor might have been one of the best, the final product may be one of the best things that's ever been produced in that space, but it's how the haphazard way they go about creating. So what is that customer going to talk about for the rest of their life? The fire, the bad treatment, and what's going to be overlooked if this guy or this company did a glaringly great job in the end. That's all going to
doesn't matter.
That's all diminished. Yeah. That's all taken away. And that's the thing. And I think, and again, we're in this digital age. I think it's important. I love the lesson learned by Ray Bradbury's book. I read it in about 2002. It's called A New Brand World. He was this CBO for Starbucks. He came from the Nike Just Do It campaign. He comes to Starbucks, and to shorten the story, I just love it. He says, what's the brand DNA here? They go on this massive search in their own marketing department at Starbucks. What's our brand DNA? They figure out they're an atmospheric brand, and it all comes down to a simple statement a barista makes. Mr. Schultz goes into one of the Seattle coffee houses that he owns there, and he says to one of the baristas, says, hey, we're trying to figure out the brand DNA and everything. How would you describe it? He goes, Mr. Schultz, that's easy. Here, we don't serve coffee to people. We serve people coffee. And Mr. Schultz says, there you go. And we can all live by that. We serve people contracting services. We don't serve contracting services to people. And so we are engaging with people. And it's those perceptions and those impressions and those things. Oh, are those guys in the end imposters? Did they promise something they couldn't do? Or were those guys, and gals, were they the real deal? Did they deliver what they said they were going to do? And processes, put the guardrails up to ensure that you do that with consistency and little stuff like that. Yeah, guys, don't leave a job site if you're a contractor and leave all the nails and crap on the driveway so that people get flat tires.
Simple stuff.
Burn hedges down. And
it's simple stuff. It's simple. It goes back to processes and procedures, simple stuff that should be done, and it's never lined out. So it's never going to get done.
And I always use in all my discussions and in my book, I use deck building as a primary example. Matt's heard it 100 times, but again, as I sat at these picnics, decade after decade, the 90s, in the 2000s, I hear somebody talk about a deck, man, I keyed in, right? Whether it's a church function or whether it's a backyard barbecue or relatives getting together, they're talking about deck builders, and nothing against deck builders. I've had 2 great decks built, 1 bad one.
Yep.
But what are they talking about? They're never talking about the galvanized hardware, the mitered corners, the stain they used, the width of the steps. They're always talking about whatever you do, don't use these people. They fail to return phone calls. They don't return texts. They show up for 4 hours a day. They disappear without knowing where they're going. They have to always run and get nails and screws. My gosh, don't they just have these nails and screws? They build decks. Aren't these like standard? You know what I mean? It's and then, don't clean up the job site. Then the wife gets a flat tire. She's got to call AAA to get and I gave one, I used this in a company not too long ago. I did a day-long seminar, and I didn't get halfway through this thing, and I see a woman raise her hand. I said, yeah, did you have a question? She goes, I'm sorry, are you eavesdropping on my life? That's exact thing happened to me.
Yeah.
Because I've listened to it, Eric. I'm not making it up. I've listened to it.
What is it? Just deck builders?
No, it's contract. The contract.
Well, Deals Gone Bad speaks for itself. Have you been in that Facebook group?
No.
So on Facebook, there's a contractor group, Deals Gone Bad, every single day, multiple posts a day. Just for St. Louis, they're talking about I paid X, Y, and Z, and here's the work that they've done, or zero work that's been done.
Bingo.
It's all day.
So here's where I think the problem lies. Guys like myself, I've been with enough companies where I've been able to be exposed to best practices. Companies have programs where they put you got to take 40 hours of classroom training a year, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
So, and I've been with some bigger companies that teach best practices. A lot of contractors know how to do what they do with absolute excellence, with polish and finesse. It's how they go about doing it. They've never been exposed to best practices, never been taught. So the reason sites like that are so overwhelmingly crowded with activity everywhere is because those business people don't understand that in the end, they're probably going to be measured and reviewed on how they did what they did, not what they did. And so it's there where they've never been exposed to best practices. And what my book and what my podcast tries to do is illuminate some of those simple things. Like if you just, a great example I had, Matt and I did a show a couple weeks ago, and I highlighted the Home Interiors Group out of St. Peters, Missouri, that installed our 22 windows. It was phenomenal. And I mean, that's a benchmark for everybody to follow.
It's a lot of windows too.
Yeah. And you know what they did? They came in, they priced it out. We had a bunch of people come in. Long story short, we give them the job. They go, hey, can we just come by one more time and measure the windows just to make sure we have the right measurements? My wife and I are like high-fiving, like this is the attention to detail we want. Yes, come in. They came in, right? They come in. They come in. A team of them finally get in there. We had the supply chain issues in 2021. They finally got the windows, right? And you're in this space and the roof, repair. So they come in with the windows. They bring 4 people in. So for half a day, 4 people tackle the windows. And the owner and his older son say, you know what, we're going to leave this business to these 2 gentlemen. They're going to take it from here and they're going to do the rest of the windows. We've got all our, questions answered internally, and they know what to do. Well, when those 2 young men left on a Friday morning, 22 windows later, Eric, if I invited you into my house right after they left and pulled out of the driveway, you would never know 22 windows were installed in my house that week.
Clean as a whistle.
You would never know it. Never. And not only 2 years later, can I tell you, they work with excellence. They block the heat and all that. That company understood what a home consumer wanted out of that. I mean, everything was vacuumed. There wasn't a splinter. There wasn't a remnant. There wasn't a nail. There wasn't a screw. There wasn't insulate, nothing. And it was the most wonderful, $15,000 I ever spent. You know what I mean? I mean, it's great.
Well, you talked to the owner. So did you feel that came from top down as far as like, the culture and processes and things like that actually being in place. Like that's something he instills in those guys. Because it's not like those guys, at the end of the day, the younger guys that installed it, the two of them, would have cared as much if you wouldn't have an owner that cares.
110%. But I guarantee you that owner laced that company with processes.
Yeah.
There were processes in place from every point to the finish.
Before you leave, X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's mind-blowing that companies don't have that stuff set up. And I've talked to companies that are worth, 20, 30, 50 mil in revenue, and they don't even have some of these processes set up. And it's almost like they're built through mergers and acts, right? So they're built through mergers and acquisitions, buying companies. But at the end of the day, it's like your evaluation is going up, but you don't have a good service to, your end users. So you just have this evaluation that's kind of there. Okay, great. You're going to sell to like a PE group or something like that. But I don't feel like you actually care about your actual end users, the ones that are making you worth the $50 million you are today.
Bingo.
And it's crazy to me that you have companies at that type of valuation that don't have that type of stuff set up. But also, I guess, we also have Sam Bankman-Fried, that stole billions of dollars. So,
well, yeah, I mean, listen, it's a twisted world.
Yeah,
but if you're a business owner and you've got it all on the line, I mean, just remember what a huge company like Starbucks uncovered in 1995.
Yeah.
You're serving people whatever you do.
What do you think about them trying to start a union?
I haven't followed the ins and outs of it. It's a shame to see, I think, in a way, because I think that there's good intention. Unions are good intentioned in a lot of ways, but unfortunately they're subject to power struggles in the end. And, and I think it can end up getting uglier than prettier at the end.
Yeah, I think they're trying to do a good thing, which is Starbucks makes an absorbent amount of money. Like their profit at the end of the year is massive. Meanwhile, the people that work there, I don't know what they start off at Starbucks. I'm sure it's not. Yeah, Matt, go ahead and take a look at that. I'm sure it's not $12, maybe $15. But I do understand, say someone's there for 3-5 years and you're still only making $18 a bucks at Starbucks. Meanwhile, that you've made, 100 mochas in the last hour. You add that up and you're like, holy shit, the amount of the amount of product I just made in this hour is 1,000 times, my pay.
Yeah.
And I, of course, from a business owner standpoint, I understand that, there's costs and everything else, but I think it's hard for them to understand that.
Yeah.
And I also don't think it's explained to employees very well. And, team members, almost opening up the books to them. And not in terms of having to show everything, but I think that there's a financial illiteracy inside companies, especially with the understanding from leadership to, bottom line employees, and them seeing, say Vi made $1 million last year, but meanwhile we have, someone that's new to SEO only making $30,000 a year, but then we can show them, X, Y, and Z, here's why is that the case, right? Yeah. You're new, you're bringing in this amount of value. Yeah. Here's the revenue you're actually bringing in on a monthly basis and the amount of, clients you're working with in X, Y, and Z. And I think potentially we get to the point where people just have a better understanding of why businesses are ran the way that they are, at least the well-run runs, right? So...
Hey there, St. Louis podcast listeners. We've got some exciting news from our sponsor, Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, led by the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Lee. Mark Lee of Farmers Insurance is recruiting agency owners here in St. Louis.
That's right, Garrett, and everyone knows what Farmers Insurance is, and if they don't, they will now.
Yes, it's kind of a household name. That said, as many of you know, a large part of our audience is made up of badass business owners, entrepreneurs, and top producing sales professionals with an open mind like yourself. Farmers Insurance is currently searching for driven individuals who aspire to own their own business or already own their own business and want to add another income stream to join the Farmers Insurance brand and own their own insurance agency.
This is a stellar opportunity to build your own insurance agency from scratch, take over an existing agency, or if you're just a slow roller, we know you the guys out there and ladies, get paid to train under an existing successful agency owner before starting your own.
Holy shit, Eric. That means that whether you have experience as a business owner or you've never heard the word business before in your life, there's a pathway to owning your own business through Farmers Insurance Agency led by Mark Lee.
That's right. You can become a Farmers Insurance business owner even if you've been homeless in the past, just like you.
Yeah, thanks.
If you've ever dreamt of being your own boss, building a team under a reputable brand, and making a difference in your community by offering top-tier auto, home, and commercial insurance to consumers and businesses in your area, Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, led by the godlike man himself, Mark Lee, has the perfect opportunity for you.
Visit insurancecareerstl.com to speak with Mark Lee, the district manager of Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, to become a Farmers Insurance agency owner today.
Did you hear that, St. Louis? Go visit insurancecareerstl.com. Insurancecareerstl.com. That is INSURANCE, career, CAREERSTL.com.
To become a business owner today, again, one more time, visit insurancecareerstl, as in St. Louis.com today. Right now, this second, or reach out to us at stlouispodcast.com and we'll introduce you to Mark Lee ourselves. And I promise he won't spell out insurance and career to you.
Now back to the show.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a union town here, St. Louis, for sure. And, I come from the East Coast, and I've seen a lot of, and been aware of a lot of unions that have ended up distorting the original intention, and it becomes a power hungry, angle and I guess a divisive, little element to the business. So I think going back to it, I think that, those companies out there that are ESOPs, that, employee stock option companies. I just worked with one last week up in Minnesota, and it was really encouraging to hear how everyone's, able to be bought in. Hy-Vee grocery stores is a great example of an ESOP, and I think if you could do that, but if there were companies that shared more in the profitability with their employees and showed those employees that they respect what they do I think, that goes a long way, because an employee can sense some genuine respect coming from management. If you did that independent of unions, if you could figure that out, and that's where small companies have the ability to do that. They can inject that into their repertoire. And, once you can establish that, it's a much more healthy working environment.
Yeah,
for sure.
So the pay, real quick. So it goes anywhere from basically 12 to 14 an hour to start, but the managers are only making $5 more than just the regular employee.
So the managers are making 18.
Yeah.
So the managers are
what is 18? What's 18 now? Is that like 30, 33, 34 grand?
Barely, probably.
Yeah,
it's bad.
Well, I can see then at the end of the day, I mean, I was working at Breadco 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and I was making $10.
Yeah.
How are they only starting at 12 or 13 now? So that's weird.
Yeah. I had a customer of mine in Lincoln, Nebraska. They rented out two stores off an anchor store in a mall, in a mall up in Lincoln, Nebraska, and they opened up a scrub store, and they opened up a tactical store up there, and they had to close them after 2 years of the lease because they couldn't find people willing to work for $19 an hour.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yep.
So I mean,
West County Insulation, we pay our guys $20 an hour starting.
Yep.
And it's difficult to find people that want to do manual labor right now.
Yeah.
And I get it. But also the upside, there's so much upside to joining like a smaller business, even if it's, roofing or HVAC, and being able to run a team and being able to run a crew and eventually being able to say, run a county, right? And being in charge of all those, it's almost like there's not enough ambition, or maybe that's not the right word, or maybe not the right way I'm looking at it, but it's hard to find people that actually have ambition to grow inside of a company and not just want to come in, from 9 to 5, work their hours and leave. And that's great. We need those people as well. But we need more people also that I feel like just not want to start their own company, but just want to step up inside of a business.
Not to derail you guys too much, but you said 12 years ago you made $10 at bread company, right?
Right, $9.50, $10.
There. So it's still $8.50 to $10 somewhere around there. 12 years later, delivery drivers make about $15, $16.
At Breadco?
So it still has not changed 12 years later.
That's insane. I also hate Panera, so that's all right.
So my first year out of high school, this is a great story. First year out of high school, New Jersey was one of the only states with Oregon that you had to get gas.
I was about to say.
You.
So did you're a pump guy?
So
what's the term for him? Is there like a
petroleum jockey?
Is that?
Oh, absolutely. No, they call them petroleum engineers actually out there.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're a petroleum engineer.
So
what do you do? I'm a petroleum engineer now. But I tell you what, to this day, so I hated school. I didn't want to go to college. I ended up going to college 2 years after high school. But my first year out of high school, 1976, I started in when did I start this job? I guess in August or September of that year, right? If you worked a Saturday, if you worked that 6th day, I would get $106 a week. But if I didn't work that Saturday, my take-home pay was like $90, or $85 a week. Best job I ever had. I loved it. Dealing with people, meeting them, checking their oil. You meet all kinds of people.
That doesn't sound like a bad gig.
It was great, but that was a 106 cha-ching. I'm in the 3 digits this week. I mean, but that was working this Saturday. But I tell you what, still the most fun I ever had. Then I went to a night shift job my second year, and I was working in a plastics injection molding factory, plastics factory, and I worked a night shift to make an extra 60 cents, and I was pulling in $4.10 an hour in 1978, and that was a big deal.
$4.10 an hour.
$4.10. Working the graveyard shift, yeah.
How was that? So that is the graveyard shift. That's what? Is that like 11 to
12 to 8?
12 to 8.
Yeah.
Now, how'd you sleep though?
Well, you just redo your whole sleeping schedule,
I don't know if it'd be worth 60s. I've never tried it.
Yeah.
But how long did it take you to switch that over?
A couple, if I remember correctly, couple weeks to a month to get it synced.
Yeah.
But it was weird because back then my buddies were out partying and you're partying. It's like 11:30. Crap, I gotta go.
Yeah.
So that was kind of hard.
Yeah.
You didn't want to do that, but now it eventually seeps its way into being your normal schedule, and it's just weird waking up at 4 or 5 in the afternoon and or later. That was kind of weird.
You never worked a graveyard shift before, Erica? Never once.
Absolutely
any job
not.
You've ever had.
Absolutely not. Never would. I don't think I could do that.
I think you need to try at least once to see how different it is.
Well, if I don't get my sleep, I'm upset.
Well, you still get your sleep. You just sleep in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
I heard it's not healthy though.
I don't know.
But also, I mean, I guess it doesn't matter when you're
back
young.
then. I was doing so many unhealthy things.
Yeah, right. It's like who gives
I was probably the healthiest I could do at that point was to just not do anything else.
No, but getting paid. I know now graveyard shifts. I mean, you're getting paid like 25% more, which is insane. So, if you want to make more, pocket the money and definitely do that 100%.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It'd be hard for me to do that. It'd be a hard pill to swallow.
Well, you'd have to change your lifestyle around. You'd have to get used to staying up late night. You'd sleep throughout the day. You'd wake up at probably, 8 at night. So 8 p.m., get ready for your midnight shift. You have to do,
And you pick up extra skill sets. Now, in this factory, I made all kinds of different things. In an injection molding factory, you got to wait for the machine to close, to mold, to make your mold. Then it opens. Then you got a certain amount of time to take everything out, clean it to make sure that the new polymers that go in there don't get clogged, right? So if you're fast at it, you've got all this spare time. So one of the things I learned to do is I made these little, they were actually little vials for the medical market. And so at one machine, I had a big rafter ceiling, must have been 80 feet high. It felt like, because there was a DC attached to it.
Yeah.
And so I used to throw these things up in the air. And after about a year, I could throw these things up in the air about 40 feet and then catch it with my mouth and not break my teeth and so it was very skilled. So I took that skill set to my next job making pizzas.
Yeah.
And then what we would do is we'd get a full house and they would start throwing meatballs at me, and I would catch meatballs in my mouth. And had I not done,
do we have anything to throw at Jeff?
Had I not done that job, right, in the plastics factory, I could never catch hot meatballs on the fly.
It's so funny.
Hey, Mace, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like a little act.
How are you making more at the pizza job than the...
The pizza job was my summer job, and that was
okay.
I would move down to the Jersey Shore,
Nice.
the
Okay.
Jersey Shore.
Yeah.
And so then I would work for making pizzas, and then when the only time I got taken away from the pizza counter, which I learned how to twirl them and all that stuff, was when the real Italians came in. They couldn't. They were like, "Who's this blonde-haired guy, bleach blonde, making my pizza? Get him out, Luigi! Come on in, Oh, hey, come on, come on, everybody." And it was, I used to have to give way, but when the real Italians came in, I was making sandwiches.
I still need to go. I literally still want to go to New York just for pizza. I've never been to New York.
It's great.
I don't know why.
Yeah,
I've just never made my way up there.
Yeah, I worked there for 11 years and was great. I mean, it's a world all to its own.
I know.
It's really interesting. But
my worry is when I go to a city like that, I might stay for a while.
It's infectious.
I'll be like, hey,
it's infectious.
I found a spot. I'm going to be here for a couple months. Sorry.
Might not be as infectious now as it was, but
that's
to
true.
To your point, I mean, I graduated college with a lot of kids in New Jersey that went to work in New York. And if you go to live in New York, if you live in there as a young person, the hardest thing for you to do is move out.
Yeah.
That is the hardest decision of your life, because if you get used to that lifestyle, because it's, just never sleeps. They've got places, great restaurants everywhere. And it's just the rhythm, the energy, the vibe is just, it's intoxicating.
You sold me. That's exactly why I said I might stay. Same with like Miami and different spots. I'm like, I might just stay here for a little bit and hang out.
The hardest thing to do is to move out of there. Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. So I wanted to ask you about building leaders inside an organization. I think the biggest thing, and kind of what I was saying before about hiring, we're talking about culture, things like that. Of course, culture comes from the top down. So not only from, the owner or the CEO and leadership team, how do you build more leaders in an organization? What have you found that really works well in order to do that?
Well, I do totally agree. Number one, I would have to go back to that. Make sure your culture doesn't have any hypocrisy in the way, so you better show from the top that you're living and breathing what you're asking the mid-level and low-level guys to do. But, I shouldn't say low-level, but the guys and gals who are chunking out the work.
Yeah.
So what I think is I love what Ken Blanchard explained in the 1 Minute Manager book. And if you've never read it, if anybody has never read it.
1 Minute Manager.
Yeah. So what he does is he explains situational leadership. And I think it's the best guidepost for anybody developing good leaders. The most common mistake is you hire somebody to go repair roofs or put new roofs on, right? And then you go tell them to do it. And the two steps you forget in between are making sure you show them how to do it and then walk alongside them for a while to make sure they're comfortable in how to do it. Then once you're finished those two steps, you can go to step number 4. I think many businesses, in my opinion, if you're going to oversimplify it, miss steps 2 and 3.
So it's almost like this, right? So they're supposed to come together. You're supposed to teach someone, right? You get to the X, and then eventually they're doing it now and you're not having to do it, right? It's getting someone to that point. And it seems like, again, kind of going back to getting people to really kind of step up, team members, I think, are easier to bring on, but really having someone that wants to be a leader in an organization not only is not something that we've found that you can make someone do, meaning I see in you that you can be a good leader, but if you don't want to take that step for yourself, it's never going to happen, right? And at some point it's like, okay, great. Do you just want to be, a team member here and do your work, or, maybe it's just not the best fit at the end of the day as well, right? If they're not going to step up. So, okay. So leadership. So what do you think about sorry, go ahead.
No, so I probably didn't answer the question the actual way you asked it. So again, I think that those are important, essential things to create the work environment that will spawn leadership. Then I think it's for you as a business owner, recognize who has, because the one thing you can't do is you can't initiate ambition.
Yes.
So you've got to notice and observe and recognize who your ambitious people are. So if you live the culture from the top down, if you can effectively conduct situational leadership yourself that way, make sure you fill in the steps 2 and 3, then you look for somebody with ambition. Then once you have that ambition buy-in, you're off to the races. Then I think you've got someone. But if you are trying to force a square peg through a round hole and you haven't, then I would say that it's probably bad hiring. You've got to go then figure out how to hire people who probably have that ambition, and I'm sure some people develop that ambition along the path of work, but I think as a business owner, you can recognize it. I mean, I think you can, and you got to be open to recognizing it. And once you see it, boom, then you know who you have.
It takes a lot of work to go through hires. Like it's almost like you need to, you get 100 applications, you go through those, maybe you talk to 50, maybe you actually personally interview 5, and then maybe you get one person out of that. And I think that's hard for business owners because hiring, recruiting, it's a full-time job. It's a lot of work.
Right.
And when it takes, 150 to 100 people to get to the right person, because I think that is a realistic number, to be completely honest, because we're trying to, hire a crew leader and get people going at West County Installation because we're going to start a new crew. And finding that person, really both of those people have been a struggle. But I almost think it's been because we haven't gone through enough people, right? We've only gone through 10 people, and it's a factor, like a tenth of what we actually need to be going through to really find those people. And business owners, a lot of the time, I think, even though they get into it and they know it's supposed to be a long-term game, they look at it as short-term. It's like, hey, I need someone now. It's like, do you need someone now, or do you need someone, say over the next 30 to 90 days that you're actually going to be able to scout for, look for, and then actually bring someone on that's going to fit your culture, that's going to fit the position you need, and also actually set your business up for success instead of having to, maybe you'll still have to fire that person, but firing that person and then going through this whole process again.
Bingo. I mean, just because they're breeding doesn't mean they're going to be okay. They're going to be good. And a lot of people just, hey, I need somebody. My neighbor said that their nephew's looking for a job. I interview him. Boom, he's done.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think that you want to, especially for some of those, supervisory type of roles and managerial roles. Yeah, you want to spend time finding the right person. So I think there's a lot in the question. We behavioral example interviewing. We love that. We use that. I got that. Actually, the Wall Street Journal did an article on.
What do you mean by that?
So behavioral example interviewing would be saying, like, for instance, a question. Swear, give me the best piece of advice you were ever given. Oh, my dad told me to blah, blah, blah. Great. Give me 2 examples of where you use that. Give me some examples. So you say, how do you describe yourself as a person that's flexible at work? Oh, I'm very flexible. I do this, I do that. Give me 2 examples of how you use your flexibility to change the outcome of a project. You know what I mean? And I think that, again, I follow this. It's a Dartmouth. I read about it. It's Dartmouth and Northwestern University. I kind of combine these 2 things. And that, because I was a recruiter and I hired 65 college graduates with that model, and actually got written up by the Wall Street Journal. Had one of their reporters come and shadow one of our recruiters one day because American University in DC, they went to them and said, hey, who can we really look at that's got a great model for hiring kids out of college? You go, you got to check this guy out, Jeff Mason and his company he works with. They've got a nice little system. And we used 60 questions, 3 interviews with 60 questions of behavioral example interviewing, so that once I knew that I was trying to fulfill 70% of a will. I'm hiring salespeople. I can't manufacture will and fortitude in someone.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So I tailored all my questions to determine, does this person, without a shadow of a doubt, have the will? I can always give them the skill. that other 30% factor, but I need to recruit. So I think, again, recruiting is lazy, hiring is lazy, interviewing is lazy today.
Yeah, 100%. You throw something up on ZipRecruiter, Indeed, you scroll through them, hey, come in the office, 1 interview, 2 interviews, bam, you're done. But then you also have the other side of the spectrum with large corporations where you're having people go through 6 interviews. That sounds insane to me. I cannot fathom a reason why someone would need to go through 5 or 6 interviews with 5 or 6 different people, from the, team lead to the leader to the manager to the VP to the president. It's like, why do you need all of these people to end up with one decision?
Yeah. Well, interviewing, I had a job once, 9 interviews, 5 months. I had to go to New York City 3 times. I had to go to Atlanta 1 time. So I have to go to New York City on 3 different occasions. I interview with 2 people on 1 occasion, 1 person. Then I get flown down to Atlanta, 4 hours.
So they're paying for the flights.
Paying for the flights. So
okay.
4 hours now I'm getting psychoanalyzed to see if my psychological profile fits the company. And then my last interview was the 9th interview, and it's almost 5 months.
That's crazy.
But they wanted to make sure that they had the right type of person. They were looking for character above and beyond. So, it worked, and it's the best job I ever had, actually, for sure.
Well, I guess if the process works, then there's not much to say about it. But it's just and also, if you're expecting this person to make your business a certain amount of money, then maybe investing that time up front is well worth it for a business as well. So it depends on the role, right?
Yes. Yeah, correct. And again, like I was in the retail, I service retailers, and this is a mistake I found.
Mm-hmm.
Just you lose a buyer.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you go, hey, we got a category that we spend $57 million on. You're a planner and forecaster. Guess what? Now you're a buyer. Well, wait, I didn't want to be a planner and forecaster. Well, now you're a buyer.
Yeah.
And you got a $57 million pencil. So go to it. And then, these people, it was hard.
Yeah.
Dealing with them because they didn't have an aptitude for it. Nobody trained them.
Mm-hmm.
And here they got this huge pencil and they're making huge decisions. And you're walking into the mall every day looking at what these people are buying. And, it's a weird formula.
Yeah.
It always weirded us out. Like, wow, this is way too casual. And we used to just kid that they were breathing.
Why is that the case? Why is it someone not more important, more qualifications, better at the job, making those massive decisions? How does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think.
Well, Sears and all those companies are going away. So, maybe there's
the fallout to that. So,
yeah.
So here's what I think. Pure speed to market. How can I take a shortcut? How can I limit? I want the easiest way possible. I don't want to spend a lot of time in this. I got to get my job done. Whatever.
Yeah.
But we're just used to this. We want it now.
Mm-hmm. We need that dopamine hit right now.
Yeah. And so you just go. You go, how many heartbeats a minute? Come here. You're in. I'm being facetious, but it got silly. Sometimes we would have buyers that would say, look, I honestly don't know what I'm doing. When my boss heard me say that, they'd kill me. So I'm relying on you to tell me, what do I need to know to buy, 180,000 pants from you? What is it? I made pants. That's what I did. So you're like, okay, well now that person's, saying I was just chucked into this job. I have no idea what I'm doing.
I should have sold clothes in the past. Is it still like this?
I don't know.
It's like, can I still go into these? I got some pants I can sell.
To your point, though.
Let's make a pant company. Jeez.
To your point, it's not a lot of retailers out there anymore. So,
that's true.
But, you still got, people are still making pants for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So one last thing I wanted to ask you about, more on the news side. So Zoom's going back to the office.
Yeah.
Now I think this is hilarious considering obviously the company's Zoom, right?
Right.
You're supposed to be able to work from home, right? So now they're going hybrid. Same as Apple has, same as Amazon has. They said, we believe that a structured hybrid approach, meaning employees that live near an office need to be on site 2 days a week. And I think that changed to 3 for Zoom. With their teams is the most effective for Zoom. As a company, we are in a better position to use our own technologies, continue to innovate, and support our global customers. You also have Apple like I was telling you before, they actually opened up like a hotel on their campus for their employees to pay $99 a night to stay there, which of course, obviously Apple, maybe it's Google that did it. I forget which one. Sorry. Apple or Google, whoever it is. But of course that works great for them. It's like, hey, stay on campus,
Right.
stay here. So this whole work from home thing, I think, at least from a corporation's perspective, doesn't work as well as at least having people in the office part-time, which I can see from a small business perspective as well. I don't think Vi, especially from a culture perspective, would be where we're at if we just worked from home every single day. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, I think it's kind of funny when you think of Zoom, right?
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it's like, hey, we are a train company. We make trains, but guess what, guys? Half of you are going to take the bus.
Yep.
I don't get it. So it's kind of weird. You know what I mean? I mean,
it is.
From that point of view, and Apple, I mean, that just seems like a profit center baked in there for, or whoever it is doing it. That's ridiculous.
Google. It's Google.
Google?
Oh, it's Google.
And just so you know, that $99 is a summer special. They're going to charge the employees more after summer is over because they don't make enough money the way it is.
I don't get it.
I mean, so going back to making pants, right? When you go out to these different sectors of the world, I've been to Bangladesh and Indonesia, and you go to, Sri Lanka, and so these big factories, a lot of times they have these complexes where they give you 2 squares a day, they give you housing, and when you come there, you're there on campus. It's the housing's baked into your, it's fairly raw and rude in comparison to Western standards. But the same thing, if you're going to do that, if you're going to institute something like this, why don't you build a hotel of sorts and, make that fee $15 a night or $10 a night.
Yeah.
With free coffee and donuts or whatever, breakfast in the morning.
Right. Essentially pay it off for them.
You want to create an incentive for them to want to be in the office. And
exactly.
Why would you institute a divisive mechanism in that formula? I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Does it say how many rooms there are? How many, if you can find, if they say anything about the rooms, Matt, I'm curious just how many people they expect. Because Google's campus, how many people work on it?
A lot.
Yeah.
So they have the Bay Area, 4,000 employees across 42 acres.
Jeez.
So they have 42 acres. Oh, so they have a hotel for temporary workers and indoor courtyards to make staff feel like they're outdoors. It's so weird. It's like, I don't know. The whole San Francisco thing is weird. It's weird.
Very, very strange these days. Yeah. I mean,
the city's falling apart.
Yeah, it is falling apart.
I saw a video. Now, I don't know if you guys watched Louis Rossmann. He had a bunch of videos about New York commercial office space. Like right after COVID, he was just walking down streets and everything was empty. This other guy was doing this in San Francisco now, and he just walks down streets that used to have people flourishing, and now it's completely dead. There's nothing there.
Same thing with New York. Yeah, I know some people that have, been to the office since COVID in New York City twice, and the companies ended up closing the offices and went virtual. And it's changed dramatically, like San Francisco, for sure.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
It is.
So to answer your question, Eric, they have a 3-decade plan that by the end of all that time, they're going to have 7,000 residential units available for people to rent out. And they only work them 3 days a week. They only expect you to be there 3 days a week.
Then you go home and work from home.
And you go home and work from home. But that's still, so they're basically probably not going to make a requirement, but they're going to be like, hey, we want you to stay on this place 3 days a week, be on call.
Well, it's almost like they're, hey, by the way, if you moved and you no longer are by San Francisco, it doesn't matter because now we have this. You can stay there.
You can come back to work 3
days
a week, stay there, and then go home. That's so stupid.
Yeah, I'm sure that's fun for people that have kids. That sounds lovely.
Well, don't you guys
try and sell that to your wife or husband?
Well, what do you guys think? I mean, so at post-COVID, where is your head at as, Vi? I mean, how do you...
So we work 4 days in the office, and on Fridays we work from home.
Okay.
But I'm at the office on Fridays as well.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think you can institute a good culture virtually.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't, even just the interactions you have in the office would never happen at home. Right. And I think the biggest argument is for working from home. And I completely get it. Some people work from home better. Matt was just saying he likes silence and things like that, but there's a lot of people that thrive off of being in the office. I would argue more people want to be in the office than not. I think that the people that don't want to be in the office potentially don't have like roles where they need to be talking with people all the time, which that makes sense then for, maybe you not having to be in the office because you literally do work and maybe you're on a team and you talk to a team. But like if you're running teams and things like that, I just don't see how you can do that virtually. And you can, but not as effectively.
Right.
There was a study a while back. I can't remember the actual source, but it was basically depending on your personality type, certain personality types work better in a more closed off, like at your home environment.
Yeah.
And some who are very personable need to be in that thriving like office space. So like for me, working from home is fine.
Yeah.
But now if you had someone say that was like a salesman working from home, they probably do a lot worse for the company than if they were working at the office.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also like I 100% get working from home, not having to drive to the office and back, not having the wear and tear on your vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. I think the biggest thing though that business owners see, and I can almost guarantee that these large corporations are not just bringing people back to bring them back. They know that it affects them bottom line revenue. They have to, or at least productivity across the board or some sort of metric that they're measuring, knowing that the people that come in get more work done than the people that don't. And from their standpoint, it's pretty easy, right? They're never going to make everyone come all the way back in, or maybe that's their 30 or 50-year plan that they won't tell anyone about. But they need people in the office a couple days a week.
Well, I think if you were to just poll your friends and your neighbors and and ask what they think about it, I think the shocking result would be, to your point earlier, so many people want to go back to the office.
Yeah.
They want that environment. They want that camaraderie. They want those guardrails. They want that structure. Kids, we learn a lot about kids. Kids a lot of times in your younger years will push the boundaries to see how far they can.
Yeah.
What's their boundary level, and what they're really wanting to know is what where's the end to this freedom, and not so much freedom, but where's the end to my independent thinking, and where's the structure? They need structure. And employees need structure, and employees like it when there's structure, because a lot of employees don't do that well on their own if they're left just to manage their own timeline.
Correct.
They don't.
Correct.
So yes, I think companies are suffering. I think if they're fooling themselves if they're not thinking that productivity is falling. You've got a couple independent operators in the midst that are highly functioning at home. They love it better. They like it. But I don't think it's the majority.
I don't think so either. We're probably going to get some heat for this one. I'll wait for it. All right.
Yes.
So anything else on the Zoom?
Oh, man, I don't know. Well, they just changed their favicon. How long ago did they change their favicon? Did you notice that? Yeah. They finally came up with the right Z to go in there. Did you notice that, Matt?
Oh, yeah, they did. Interesting.
Yeah. So,
Huh. Wow, moving up.
They are. I always wondered, where's their favicon update, man? Come on now.
That's so interesting. I never noticed that before. That's crazy.
But, still, I think they've become a household name. They've become like a Google is to search engine.
Well, their stock price is back down to where they started before COVID.
Well, they've got some competition.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't.
Microsoft Teams. Yeah, you got a bunch of stuff now that really wasn't there beforehand.
But we're all going to say for the rest of our lives, Zoom. We did a Zoom call. We had a Zoom call. Oh, was it Microsoft Teams? Oh, I don't know. Zoom, It was a Zoom call. And that's
it's like Kleenex.
Correct.
Yep. 100%. So before we wrap up today's episode, what social media profiles, talk about your business. Tell us, tell the audience, where can they find you? Where can they learn more?
SimpleBiz360.com. That's where you can find me. That's our URL. You can get connected with, me on LinkedIn there. You can go to Instagram from there, Facebook from there. But we're SimpleBiz360 on everything. We do our weekly podcast on YouTube. We're on Rumble TV now, and then we're on 28 listening platforms. So You can get connected. You can go onto my website and get connected through them, or you can just find us Simple Biz 360. And we're chugging along, loving it. I'm in a series now where it's only 5-minute podcast. So it's 3 business tips in 5 minutes. And I lay 3 things out there for you to think about. A couple episodes coming up, circular service. How many times have we dealt with companies that just continue to yank your chain with the service and it just goes in circles and no one ever does anything? So what are the easy things to look for and do to change that, right? So these are things we talk about, and so we're having some fun with that format. I really like it. It's quicker, it's swifter. And then Simple Biz 360, what I geared it towards as I wrote the book and did the podcast, were really wanted to move into speaking engagements and workshop engagements with companies. So I am happy to say, like I said, I just was invited to an annual business meeting in Australia to speak for an hour. And, I do 8-hour in-house workshops where I just expose the company to the tenets of the experience economy. So we flush out the experience economy and we're enveloped in that. And how does that affect the way you do business, your processes, like you said? So I've got a 4-hour workshop. I've got an 8-hour. I've got, 2-hour workshops I can customize. And so that's been a cool thing. I've got my second national speaking gig lined up so I've done one where I've gone to a national convention and haven't been the keynote speaker, but people are fascinated with this idea of, tell me more about this experience economy. So if you're not really understanding what that is, jump in on the podcast every week. We have not missed a week since we started mid-October 2019. So we're having tons of fun.
That's awesome.
I do it right here, guys, in this studio. And Matt and Alex, Matt's been, spearheading the team for the actual recordings for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. So great job, Matty. Thank you, buddy. And, just having fun, man, doing it. And it's a fun topic of conversation because people don't always understand the experience economy. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And once you get your eyes open to it, it's like, I didn't realize they were measuring me on how I'm doing this more, in many cases, more so than what I do.
Yep. Well, you can be a more successful company with a little bit shoddier work, but having a way better customer experience versus maybe the company that does amazing work, but has terrible customer experience. Yeah. Which is wild.
Well, but so I'm in Milwaukee a couple years ago, and so you're in the installation business, right? So I referenced roofing before. Sorry. So you're in the installation business. So here I am. I'm in Milwaukee. I'm getting ready to go out on my day's worth of appointments, and I hear this television ad in the background, and it's this guy that does kitchen remodeling. And so I all of a sudden, I was like stunned when I heard it. But he goes, "Hey, everybody, are you tired of, having workers show up when they want? You don't get a full 8-hour day. They leave a mess behind. You've got to go get your tires fixed because you got nails in them." And, and he threw out a couple of things. Yeah. Well, that'll never be a concern if you use the ABC Kitchen Modeling Company. Next thing you see on the television commercial is his fleet of vans. They've got 12 vans in this picture, right? That'll never be a problem with the ABC Kitchen Remodeling because we show up when we say we're going to. We don't leave a mess. We give you a good final product. So if you need a quote, call. And, it happened so fast. I didn't even, I couldn't rewind the TV or whatever. I couldn't take any notes down. But I said, this guy gets it. No wonder he's got a fleet of 12 vans because he understands that's what the people are pissed about.
Yep.
They're not running around telling everybody about the great kitchen remodeling job. They're running around telling everybody about how all these kitchen remodelers suck because they do this, that, or the other thing. You know what I mean?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
So he knew it. He played off of that. And if you can play off that experience, and look at retail now. Everybody has talk about petroleum engineers, right? They got customer experience engineer or whatever they're calling it. But it's like, it's a joke. You're a clerk, you're working checkout and you're calling it. Well, you know what? If you're calling it the customer experience, why don't you think through that a little bit further?
I almost feel like the customer experience is down for self-checkout as well. And I think Fresh Time just did it a couple months ago, and I was like,
Yep.
huh.
Yep.
I guess I'm checking my organic produce out as regular produce. I'm just kidding. All right. So that's all the time we have for today. Show Jeff some love. Go ahead, subscribe to Simple Biz 360. Check out his website. If you guys need someone to host a workshop, if you need a speaker, please reach out to Jeff and on simplebiz360.com. Give him a shout. And definitely, as I said, listen to his podcast as well every week. What day do you?
Thursday morning. It comes
Thursday.
out. Yep.
So Thursday for Jeff, Friday for us. Perfect. So you got us back to back daily. That's all the time we have for today. St. Louis Podcast will be back next week, 7 a.m. Central Standard Time with a new episode and new guest. If you're watching live or later and we said something wrong, said something you hate, as always, feel free to DM myself. Feel free to send Katie a message as well. She loves all the hate mail that we get every single week. And, of course, for the people that love us, please subscribe, leave a comment, give us a thumbs up, give us a good rating. We definitely appreciate that as we continue to grow the podcast and continue to bring on badass guests such as Jeff here. Finally, as we've talked about multiple times today, the episode was recorded at Half Coast Studios here in St. Louis. If you're looking to take a podcast to the next level, or even if you're not located here, they can actually help you with a remote podcast as well. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, Jeff.
Oh, awesome.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah.
We'll see everyone here next Friday. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eric. Take care. Thanks, Maddie. Katie.
Thanks, Jeff.
Hey there, St. Louis Podcast listeners. We've got some exciting news from our sponsor, Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, led by the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Lee. Mark Lee of Farmers Insurance is recruiting agency owners here in St. Louis.
That's right, Garrett, and everyone knows what Farmers Insurance is, and if they don't, they will now.
Yes, it's kind of a household name. That said, as many of you know, a large part of our audience is made up of badass business owners, entrepreneurs, and top producing sales professionals with an open mind like yourself. Farmers Insurance is currently searching for driven individuals who aspire to own their own business or already own their own business and want to add another income stream to join the Farmers Insurance brand and own their own insurance agency.
This is a stellar opportunity to build your own insurance agency from scratch, take over an existing agency, or if you're just a slow roller, we know you the guys out there and ladies, get paid to train under an existing successful agency owner before starting your own.
Holy shit, Eric. That means that whether you have experience as a business owner or you've never heard the word business before in your life, there's a pathway to owning your own business through Farmers Insurance Agency led by Mark Lee.
That's right. You can become a Farmers Insurance business owner even if you've been homeless in the past, just like you.
Yeah, thanks.
If you've ever dreamt of being your own boss, building a team under a reputable brand, and making a difference in your community by offering top-tier auto, home, and commercial insurance to consumers and businesses in your area, Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, led by the godlike man himself, Mark Lee, has the perfect opportunity for you.
Visit insurancecareerstl.com to speak with Mark Lee, the district manager of Farmers Insurance of St. Louis, to become a Farmers Insurance agency owner today.
Did you hear that, St. Louis? Go visit insurancecareerstl.com. Insurancecareerstl.com. That is INSURANCE, career, CAREERSTL.com.
To become a business owner today, again, one more time, visit insurancecareerstl, as in St. Louis.com today. Right now, this second, or reach out to us at stlouispodcast.com and we'll introduce you to Mark Lee ourselves. And I promise he won't spell out insurance and career to you.